Humbled for this opportunity given by AKCP, Dr. Venkatesan, Professor Anburaj, and all the family of Kalasalingam University. Thank you very much. Today, as a part of this 22nd virtual learning, we are going to understand about my experience, my journey with the regulatory affairs. As a fellow pharmacist, I would like to share my experience. I will try to make this discussion as simple as possible, as less technical as possible. So at the end of the session, as Dr. Venkatesan told, please feel free to ask your questions. I'll be very happy to answer you. Emergence of regulatory affairs as a powerful function in the modern pharmaceutical industry, a overview. A small brief about me. While Dr. Venkatesan has told a lot about me, I am supermost junior to Dr. Venkatesan. So I did my B.Pharm from the same college, Kalasalingam College of Pharmacy. I did my M.Pharm from BITS Pilani in the specialization of molecular modeling and drug design. I also did an international business in MBA. Professionally, I had slightly a mixed experience, like fruit mixture. I was in sales, I was in marketing, I was also in formulation R&D, and then my journey with the regulatory affairs started with Microlabs Limited, Bangalore. Then I moved to Dubai, where I had diversified experience of regulatory affairs with two major phytopharmaceutical company, Himalaya Drug Company and Dabur International. In this learning series, we will be understanding what is regulatory affairs, what is pharma regulatory affairs more precisely, when and why regulatory affairs came into existence, who is Paracelsus and origin of regulations, key regulatory agencies across the world, major regulatory environment and guidelines, evolution of regulatory affairs as a function, multifaceted role of regulatory affairs, functions of regulatory affairs, what are all governed by these regulations now, and the major regulatory checks in each of this category. What are the possible career options available for you all in regulatory affairs? And then we can have your questions. What is regulatory affairs? More precisely, what is pharma regulatory affairs? Regulatory affairs is a very, very general term. Everything is governed by regulatory. There is regulatory in telecom industry, there is regulatory in banking, there is regulatory everywhere. Starting from food industry to tire industry, everything is governed by regulations now. So what do you mean by pharma regulatory affairs? To be more interested to us, as we being pharmacists, our focus is today mostly going to be on the pharma regulatory affairs. So what does this function do in a pharmaceutical industry? Basically, pharma regulatory affairs is a bridge or an interface between the company and the regulatory authorities across the world to attain something called as registration. We also call it as marketing authorization. For example, if we wanted to sell some product in a particular country, we need to register that particular product in that country. So every country has their own set of regulations. So we need to comply to that requirements to get registration. So what is registration? In our day-to-day life, we also do registration. Getting an Aadhaar card is also a registration. We submit documents to these authorities. Finally, we get something called an Aadhaar card or a PAN card. That is also a registration. We buy a new car, we go and register the car, we get FC. That is also a registration. And if you see in this slide, there is also a US FDA registration certificate, which is considered one of the most prestigious certification for a pharma product in United States. That is also registration. So registration is a broad terminology, and pharma regulatory affairs, its prime function is to get registration of a product in a country to sell the product in that country. We also need to keep track of changing regulations and advise companies accordingly. We also submit dossiers. Dossiers are nothing but of technical files which contains all information about that particular product to regulatory agencies. So basis that, there will be a lot of discussions happen between the company and the regulatory agencies, finally for them to provide the registration. Regulatory affairs also provide strategic and technical advice to the companies with respect to basic product design and development, and it also at the end of the day has to be commercially and technically viable for the company. The last point, last but not the least, So whatever we submit, we need to archive that data. We have to document the data, because most of the cases what happen, the data is submitted 5 years later or 10 years later, that particular drug develops some kind of drug effect. So for us to understand what was submitted, it is important to archive data. So there are companies who archive data for more than 20-30 years of data from the time of submission. That is also a principal function of pharma regulatory affairs. So when and why this regulatory affairs came into existence? So if you see, it's a human tendency. We always learn from our mistakes. Nothing emerged or nothing formed as is. There are some disaster happen. Basis that we develop some kind of a guideline or a regulation. There are critical incidences happen in the medical world in the past, precisely in the 20th century. I have highlighted only 2-3 important examples which led to development of some serious guidelines for companies to work on the products. One is elixir sulfanilamide tragedy. This is basically an antibacterial which was used for streptococcal infections. In US, it was very commonly and widely used, where sulfanilamide is given along with diethylene glycol as a solvent. This led to death of more than 100 people. Then US FDA suddenly got up and then decided that we need to have some serious regulations. Otherwise, this may lead to further serious disorders across the country. That is when Federal Food and Drug Cosmetic Act of USA formed. Before that, US FDA, which is considered currently as one of the most prestigious, tough regulatory agency, was only checking adulteration and mislabeling. The second one you all must have read during your first or second year, thalidomide. It's an anti-emetic used for morning sickness by a lot of pregnant women in Europe around 1950s. But the effect of thalidomide came across very lately, where children were born with fetal abnormalities. There are children who died. It leads to a serious teratogenic toxicity. That made European Union to come across stricter regulations for registering a product in entire Europe. But the story didn't end there. If you see, there are a lot of molecules launched and withdrawn from the market. There are sibutramine, rofecoxib, cerivastatin, nimesulide, rosiglitazone, etc. A recent story, if you all see in the news, now for COVID, hydrochlorothiazone, suddenly we said we should start using it. Then later some countries said, no, don't use it. WHO came and told, no, there are no safety studies to use it. Then there are certain agencies came and told, for minor cases of COVID, we should use it. So still it's not clear. So nothing is sure in the industry till its safety is proved. So this particular phenomenon is a continuing phenomenon. We can never say that in future whatever comes is going to be safe, or whatever we are having till today is safe in future. Paracelsus, a Swiss physician, rightly told, only the dose makes the poison. It means everything what we consume today is a poison. Only if we take in right content and right dosage, it's a medicine or a food. So this forms the basis of toxicology. In the modern era, during the late 20th century, lot of regulatory bodies then originated. One such important body is ICH, International Conference for Harmonization. They have brought down lot of regulations pertaining to 4 major disciplines: quality, safety, efficacy, and multidisciplinary. ICH, once they formed lot of guidelines and regulations, they brought lot of global regulatory bodies and the pharmaceutical companies in discussing how they will harmonize registering and selling medicines across the world. Thus in 1980s, some of the developed countries like European Union formed harmonized requirements to approve medicines in Europe. Then World Health Organization came into picture, because when Europe or US come across some regulation, they try to implement, that may not be viable or practically possible for countries with low income. So it is important for also those countries, those bodies to provide affordable medicine even to low income countries. That is when WHO came into the picture in harmonizing these guidelines. The last but not the least, CDSCO. This is the national regulatory body of Indian pharmaceutical industry. It is in India. It serves the same purpose of the world pharmaceutical market. But then we may normally don't come across CDSCO in our day-to-day life, like the way we come across US FDA or MHRA or Japanese FDA. But how CDSCO is very important. I can compare CDSCO with BCCI. I think most of you are well versed with cricket. In the entire world cricket, the most important body is BCCI. The most important cricket team is India. The most important tournament is IPL. Same way, CDSCO is extremely important. You may ask why? Why? How come CDSCO is extremely important? In the today's scenario, for the entire world market, 50% of generic medicines are supplied by India. 40% of the entire medicines of US generics are from India. 20% of medicines consumed in Japan and other European nations are from India. 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients are made from India and China only. So that is how CDSCO plays an important role, because any product, any generic medicine, if it is getting manufactured by a manufacturer in India, they have to go through a lot of regulations laid down by CDSCO. So that is the first step. So CDSCO controls anything and everything which then proceeded to the various countries and various regulatory bodies. What are the key regulatory agencies across the world? It means every country, every practical country in the world has a regulatory agency. It can be, the country can be as small as Maldives or Sri Lanka to a bigger country like US. Everybody have their own regulatory agency, but something what I listed here are one of the most stringent and toughest regulatory bodies. If we have our products registered in any of these agencies, it is as good as we can register in anybody else in the world. US FDA, United States Food and Drug Administration, MHRA is from UK, ANVISA is Brazil, Australia's TGA, Therapeutic Goods Administration, SAFRA of South Africa, Saudi FDA, in our region considered as one of the most renowned, strict, stringent regulatory body. European Medicines Agency controls the entire European Union of 30 plus countries. ICH, International Harmonization, Conference of Harmonization, and PMDA of Japan. These regulatory agencies put together brought a lot of regulatory environment and application for the entire world. What are those? For example, in US FDA, there are two principal applications which we normally come across. One is NDA, another one is ANDA. NDA means New Drug Application, ANDA is abbreviated New Drug Application. In the Europe, you have EMEA, European Medicines Agency, where we submit CTD, Common Technical Document. It's an extensive data for a product, comes in 5 modules, we submit for registration across European Union. Europe had made systems very easy that you register a product in one country of an European Union, extend the same registration across the Europe for all the countries with a simplified procedure. Then you have ASEAN CTD. It is basically the regulations handled for all the Southeast Asian countries. You have International Conference of Harmonization, ICH, then you have PMDA Japan. All this broadly divided the good practices. The major good practices are as below: good manufacturing practices, good distribution practice, good clinical practice, good storage practice, and good regulatory practice. Then comes PICS, Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme. A lot of countries comes under this inspection scheme where they jointly inspect facilities for audit. When a particular manufacturing facility is audited by these facilities, they approve the product for GMP. Finally, the more important is the entire world is currently working on pharmacoeconomics. It is very important to price the product rightly so that everybody in the world, whether it is a high income country or a low income country, they get the product at an affordable price. Evaluation of regulatory affairs as a function. This is a phenomenal evaluation how regulatory affairs over a period of time developed as a simple function and where it is now. Initially, regulatory affairs functioned as a documentation cell. Documents are generated by the company or by the R&D. The documents are compiled by a small department just for the purpose of archiving it. Then later, regulatory affairs become a coordination department. They started discussing with each and every functions of a pharmaceutical company, try to understand the technicalities involved in registering a particular product. So thus they started interacting with people where as a pharmacist or as a chemist, they try to get technical information on each product at each sections of the dossier. Then they become registration department, where as I earlier mentioned, this department submit documents to various countries. They interact with the regulatory bodies. They submit the documents. The regulatory bodies come back and give some questions and queries. You answer them. Then finally, when both had this mutual consents, they will give registration. Later, it moved on to regulatory affairs. Regulatory affairs, it is still existing. I'm not saying regulatory affairs is not existing. It's widely existing in many companies. The functions involves registration, coordination, discussion, documentation, everything. Regulatory now moving into two important functions where many countries already implemented. Many professionals of regulatory upgraded themselves these two. One is the regulatory compliance, second is regulatory intelligence. Regulatory compliance is nothing but of you have a particular rules and laws laid down. You have a product. You see your product is complying to what are all those. There is a checklist. You have a product. You say, okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of this product. Safety wise 1, 2, 3, it's complying. Efficacy wise 1, 2, 3 is complying. I'm going for. When you go and sell this product in the market, it doesn't end there. You also monitor how this particular product goes into the market. How is the medical professionals experience? How is patients experience? You still monitor the product and finally understand and study the safety of the product for a long time. The last is regulatory intelligence, which currently we are working on. Is you foresee something which is going to come in future. In future, what is going to come? Are we started saying we will eat sugar? Sugar is not good for health. So shall we start working on formulations without sugar? Are we going to concentrate that people are getting obese or has high incidence of cardiovascular incidences? Are we going to target products or are we going to work on products which doesn't have those side effects? So these are all something you anticipate what is going to happen in future and start working on it. This is regulatory intelligence. So what are all this multifaceted role of a regulatory affairs professional or a department or a function? First is regulatory affairs make laws. Why I say they are also lawmakers? In many countries where regulations started coming up, the key functions which tell those regulatory bodies to make a law for a particular function or a particular molecule or a product is the regulatory affairs team. For example, I'll give example about neem. Neem is extremely common used herb in India and Asia. But the awareness about neem in Germany or US or Europe in terms of its safety is not well aware. So many have studied safety of neem over a period of time. So if suppose everybody wanted to sell neem, they wanted to sell neem as an antibacterial, neem has various functions. So the regulatory affairs or the regulatory body need to understand and make some guidelines what are all required to register neem. So they have to come out with a lot of steps and prerequisites. What is it LD50, what is it CD50, what is its safety dose, what are all its uses, can it be given to a child below 6 years? So they started closely working with the lawmakers and make those guidelines. So regulatory affairs department plays a vital role in even making laws and regulations. Second, the most important point, law enforcer. Suppose we are in a company, there are products getting developed, regulatory affairs monitors and say what is allowed as per the regulation for that particular country. There are countries parabens are not allowed. There are countries parabens are allowed in medicines. There are countries parabens are allowed even in food. So understanding that particular regulation and say this is allowed, this is no entry, we can go, here we can go, we cannot come back. So we have to enforce also the law to the company. Third is compliance officer. You have to do complete compliance of what is selling in a market. The regulatory affairs job doesn't end just by selling the product to the market. We also need to ensure that the product continues to comply to the regulations. It's not that we comply to the product in the first 1 year and then from the second year we started making something else. Each and every batch in countries like European Union, each and every batch of product is tested before releasing it to the patients. So compliance is the last. The fourth is law advisor. which I told as a part of regulatory intelligence, the regulatory affairs department also advises the lawmakers, the company, the patients that what is allowed as per this particular product, what is not allowed. What are the multiple hats a regulatory affairs person wear during his normal function? I have only highlighted some of the key important functions which a regulatory person come across in their day-to-day life, but it goes beyond this. For example, drug design. If suppose we are going to generate or design a molecule, regulatory affairs plays a vital role in that. Doing a preclinical study. There are countries don't allow studies in animals. So we cannot do animal study and submit to that country, which is not allowed. Clinical study. What are all the guidelines pertaining to phase 1 and phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 clinical trials? Formulation development. When we develop a product, we finalize the molecule. We know what is the molecule for. We know what is the function of the molecule. We know the drug design. In which receptor it is going to act. We know everything. But how do we make it as a product? In the market, this particular product is selling as a tablet, or it's selling as a capsule, or in different dosage form. If it is as tablet, is it to be entry coated tablet, or it is going to be uncoated tablet? What kind of tablet it should be? If it is tablet, there are so many ingredients involved in that particular process of this formulation. So what is allowed as a binder? What is allowed as a disintegrant? What can be used as a glidant? What concentration it is allowed? What concentration it is not allowed? To that level of interaction with the formulation development. Then come to quality assurance. There are standard operating procedures for manufacturing and packing a product. So what are all the cleanliness? What are all the steps to be taken? What are all the documents to be generated for a particular product when the product goes for production? This is important in terms of quality assurance. Coming to quality control. When you test the product, you test the product for which are all the parameters. There are basic parameters. When we do our basic pharmaceutics, we study the basic experiments which we do for a tablet formulation. Basic testing we do for a tablet formulations, but that's not sufficient. There are countries which need heavy metals, elemental impurities like lead, mercury, arsenic, zinc to be tested. Microbial limits to be fixed. Various countries follow various microbial limits. European pharmacopoeia have their own limits. US pharmacopoeia have their own limits. So we need to comply to that. If this particular product is developed exclusively for US, what should be the limits? If the product is developed for a global pharmaceutical market, what is the limits? So starting from fixing the limits for testing the product, regulatory affairs plays a vital role in discussion with quality control. Manufacturing, as I earlier highlighted to you, what are all the batch size we decide for manufacturing a product? That level of information is required for regulatory affairs. Regulatory intelligence, which I explained to you some time back. Safety of the product. How safe is the product? How it is packed? What kind of packaging is required for the particular product? What color of label is used? What information is to be captured in the label with respect to safety of the product or its usage of the product? Finally, compliance. Country has certain regulations. We need to comply in terms of packaging. We have to comply in terms of the formulation. Is it complying? Pharmacovigilance, the last part, which is one of the evolving department in pharmacy. Regulatory affairs plays a vital role in pharmacovigilance. And last but not least, as I told you, pricing of the product. It is very important to identify and see what is the price of the product. If can we sell this product at this price to the entire globe? Is it affordable to the patient who is from a low-income country? This is also important because currently medicines are priced in almost all the countries and they are place controlled. This is exclusively for the wellness of the patients. This is a very interesting fact. What are all governed by regulations? Everything. Don't look at this slide. This slide has things only interest to us as a pharmacist. But practically everything what you have today in your life is governed by regulations. Tire, paint, food products, chocolates, candies, milks, cars, pencils, pens, everything practically governed by regulations. Mobile phones, mobile recharge, data plans, flight tickets, bus tickets, everything is controlled by regulations. Okay, but what more interest to us is what is in this slide. Medicines are regulated, food and food supplements are regulated, cosmetics are regulated, Medical devices are regulated. Vitamins and nutritional supplements are regulated. Phytopharmaceutical products, the way herbal medicines, where we are specialized in, are regulated. Vaccines are regulated. And finally, the animal health products are regulated. You must be wondering why animal health products are regulated. Animal feed and animal feed supplements are highly regulated even than human food, because what a lamb or a goat or a hen or a chicken eats, eventually we eat the chicken. So there are a lot of things we used to get through this. So this is also highly regulated in most of the emerging and developed markets. I'll give you a broad outline of what normally we test in these categories. Medicines, we practically test everything. We check its quality, we check its safety, we check its efficacy, toxicity of the product. More precisely, we will see what preservatives to be added. Is it have sugar? Does it have sugar? If it has sugar, how much sugar? If it is having sugar, per dose has this much of sugar, can it be advised to a diabetes patient? To that level of checks. These are all only indicative. I'm not saying it is only restricted to this. These are all some of the examples for you to understand what all we check in medicines. Food and food supplements. We check safety, ingredients, allergens, sugars, more than medicines. The reason why we check in food and food supplements more in medicines, because medicine is taken by a particular person or a patient for some illness. So it is important for him to take that medicine. There is always a benefit to risk ratio involved in that. He has to take that medicine. Whether it has paraben or not, he may not die of paraben, but he may die of his own illness. But in case of food and food supplement, it is a healthy person going to take that for his own wellness for a long period of time. So he is not supposed to have allergens in that. He is not supposed to have something which is going to initiate an illness in him. Cosmetics, one of the most developed, lot of cosmetics are coming up, lot of cosmetic regulations are coming up. If you see cosmetics, we mostly now concentrate on carcinogenic ingredients. There are a lot of hair dyes, there are a lot of face creams, there are a lot of skin creams where we use chemicals which are carcinogenic. There are sunscreens where use which are sensitive to skin. All these are regulated. Medical devices, starting from wheelchair, the scissors used in the operations procedures, inhalers used for asthma, everything comes under medical devices. So what are all the safety and injury causing factors in there? Vitamins and nutritional supplements, one of the commonly misused category on the current scenario. People think that anything and everything we can eat vitamins as much as possible. No, we cannot eat. Every vitamin, every minerals have a daily allowed intake. All this are regulated, all this are prescribed by the regulatory bodies that in a day, at a particular dose, only this much can be had. Alternative and complementary medicines become extremely famous now. People are moving towards wellness. They are all moving into this concept of prevention better than cure. So people started having wellness products, herbal products, phytochemistry products now, so that they will avoid something later. They started eating now to prevent, to postpone. If suppose somebody is pre-diabetic, they are in the borderline of getting diabetes, they started eating herbal products or herbal supplements now, so that they can push their entry into diabetes maybe by 5 to 7 years. Vaccines and biologicals, they are tested for its potency, purity and sterility. And finally, as I told you, animal health products. Career in regulatory affairs, as I told you, it's a very, very, very interesting function, interesting department. When I joined, so I have a very small history to tell you, a small incident to tell you. My father and mother inspired me to join pharma. I actually have no idea that there is something called as B.Pharm. There is a specialization available, and everybody who is in the chemist shop or pharmacist. I only know this in my first year when I joined. So whenever I go and tell somebody that I am doing B.Pharm, they hear as B.Pharm, F-A-R-M. They say, is it something to do with agriculture? So I have to explain, no, this is something to do with medicines. So that is how pharmacy evolved as a very powerful function, a powerful subject, a powerful role in our day-to-day life. When it comes to regulatory affairs, when I completed my post-graduation, there was no concept as regulatory affairs. There was no department as regulatory affairs. As I told you, there are many companies has documentation cells, they have registration cells where they compile and collate documents. There are no specialization. You don't know what you need to study to become a regulatory affairs person. But believe me, each and every function, each and every subject we have in our day-to-day life has a role in regulatory affairs. Whether it is pharmaceutics, chemistry, analysis, pharmacology, pharmacognosy, everything adds to regulatory affairs. So regulatory affairs, while it is not a core specialization, it is a functional specialization. Now there are a lot of universities offering PGs in regulatory affairs, but it doesn't matter whether you do a MPharm in regulatory affairs, any specialization you are studying, that adds to an important upgrade for you in the function of regulatory affairs. Plus, if you know a foreign language, it's an added advantage. The reason why I'm telling you this is when you go into a global regulatory market, every country has a regulation. Only in India we have products in English. If I am not wrong, there are medicines you are mandatory to put in Hindi also. So Hindi and English. The same way in our region where we are now, United Arab Emirates, which we call it as Middle East, Arabic is mandatory. There are regions across US, Spanish is mandatory. In European Union, you have Latin is mandatory, Spanish is mandatory. In Russia, there is a group of countries which come allied with Russia, Russian is mandatory. So every country labeling has a role, a bigger role in terms of registering a product. So if you know an additional language, it's an advantage. More than that, if you are very systematic, if you are willing to work in technical documentation and you are organized, regulatory affairs is a department for you. And more importantly, if you are ready for a challenge every day, and if you are willing to learn something new, there are no fixed principles in regulatory affairs. Today there is something as guideline, tomorrow the guideline will get updated every day. There is something new comes up. There is something you are using since your childhood, get restricted today. There are something which you say that it's a poison. It started to use as a medicine as a considerable dose from tomorrow. So everything can change in a day. So regulatory affairs person, keep your eyes open, ears open, ready for a challenge every day. If you are someone like that, you can definitely look for a career in regulatory affairs. So with this, I will end my brief presentation on regulatory affairs. Now I will welcome you all. If you have any questions, you can put forth. I will try my best to answer you all.
Thank you, sir.
Students, you have any doubt about the global regulatory affairs? Don't hesitate to ask. Students, rise.
Yes, please. Your voice is very feeble. Can you be slightly louder?
I'm Shruti from PSG College of Pharmacy, Coimbatore.
Yeah, Shruti. Tell me.
Sir, you were talking about specializations in pharmaceutics, pharmacology, or pharmacognosy. But what about PharmD students, sir?
Okay. I won't say PharmD students cannot get into regulatory affairs at all. Regulatory affairs is also currently a very broadly divided function. As I told you, there are pharmacovigilance officers getting mandatory to be in a company for a particular operation. Pharmacovigilance officers are mostly PharmD persons currently. So they are the most preferred. So with respect to pharmacovigilance, or in European Union, they say qualified person who helps in releasing the product. All this PharmD persons plays a vital role. So while I don't say that, it's not that you cannot start company a technical dossier, or I don't say that you cannot start interacting with the formulation person. But more focused for PharmD students will be pharmacovigilance, which is also one of the branch of regulatory affairs. Hello?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Yeah. Shruti, hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I have one more question.
Yes, please.
I may be a little out of context here.
No problem.
Wanted to know what one needs to do to be on the government side of the regulatory affairs. That is to be evaluating the papers, the dossiers?
Okay, I will answer this question to the best of my knowledge, as I am away from Indian regulations for quite some time now. So when I was in India, whatever the experience I had, I will tell you what are the requirements, and I also tell you what are the possibilities. So for you to get into government regulations, I will give two examples, one India, one US. In India, you have group 4 exams to become a government regulator. The starting position is drug inspector. So you have to become a drug inspector first. Over a period of time, you become additional drug controller, assistant drug controller, maybe drug controller, or the drug control authority has a panel of members. These panel of members are not necessarily drug inspectors or drug controllers. There are renowned professors in various fields who are also part of this evaluation committee, who are also regulation makers at this moment in India. So this is how Indian regulation. So if you want to become a regulator in India, you either need to go through the exam route or you have to go through the academic route. These are the only two ways out. Coming to US. US is slightly different. Many of my informed friends are part of evaluation committee in USFD. They are regulators. How they become regulators is they did their PG in a particular specialization. After that, they also did postdoc in that specialization, published a lot of papers. They started evaluating cases independently. For example, somebody started taking thalidomide tragedy and understand how it could have been prevented. What is something they are anticipating in the coming century, that there is some drug which is going to come up, and there is something can be anticipated like this. If US FDA observes a potential in you as an evaluator of these kind of scenarios, you are extremely easy to get into US FDA. So that is how they got into US FDA. So US FDA doesn't have any exam route, it doesn't have any academic route per se. But as a person, if you are into it, as a part of evaluation of medicine, in research, you can get into US FDA. So likewise, every country have their own. If you ask, I will give you one more example. So I am currently in United Arab Emirates. I know a lot of regulators who are earlier working with companies as a regulatory affairs professional move on to become regulators. There are many regulators who moved from government regulators to becoming a professional in the company so that they can advise better because they know the laws better. So these channel of moving from commercial part of regulatory side to the regulation part of regulatory side, it is completely, I'm not saying it is impossible, it is possible, and you have to have their own plan to do it. There are no stipulated channels now, but India has. So if you want to become a regulator in India, you have to start preparing for group 4 exams.
So there is a question from a student.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Nagamanli, as a fresher, what are the skills need to be developed for working in a regulatory?
Skills for becoming a regulatory person.
Yeah.
Okay, I will tell you skills. If I honestly accept, most of the skills even I don't have. You have to be extremely systematic. You have to be very organized. You have to look very keenly for detail. You have to keep your eyes and ears open. And to a great extent, if you are interested in pharmaceutical chemistry and pharmaceutics, regulatory affairs will become extremely easy when compared to other specializations. Other than that, if you say skills, nothing. I think as a pharmacist, you will definitely by design have all others of analysis, of evaluating a particular case, understanding a particular medicine, or interacting, communication. All this comes by design.
Okay, sir. There is another question from Dr. Rajamani.
Yes.
Department of Analysis. Due to this pandemic situation, there are a lot of new drugs will launch in the market.
Okay.
To treat corona. So like Favipiravir, other drugs. Any regulatory innovations are there for launching the new drugs?
Okay, I will explain you this part slightly in a different. Whenever a pandemic comes, In most of the countries, we have a procedure called as orphan drugs, registration of orphan drugs. What do they call as orphan drugs? The drug, nobody knows what the drug is. Nobody knows how that acts. Nobody knows whether the drug is going to save or going to kill people. But at that moment of time, we have no other option to give something to save patients. So what happened? Regulatory authorities temporarily approve a product for treating the patients. But after clinicians' experience over a period of time, for example, even in Corona, they started using hydrochloroquine. When they start hydrochloroquine, when they start treating the patients, after a span of time, the clinicians understand that there are side effects. Maybe there are more people dying because of that than actually treating. So we should stop it. So this comes only from clinicians, from experienced medical practitioners. They will further advise the regulatory authorities, now please stop it. We will not be able to prescribe these products anymore because the benefit to risk ratio is extremely bad in this case. That is when clinicians come into picture. That is when World Health Organization come into picture, where they will advise these are the do's and don'ts. So in this case, for example, I am reading a news recently that Patanjali came out with some remedy for Corona. Even if we see there are a lot of social media circulating that we can have this for Corona, we can have that for Corona. Unless and otherwise it is established on a global level or on a national level, we will not be able to launch or sell a product worldwide. Till today, vaccine or a remedy for Corona is still under investigation. We have not got a drug. So as a regulatory authority, they will be keenly watching whether to approve something, can they give some medicine, or it is completely at their own decision. They take their decision whether they need to do it or they should not do it. So there are countries independently evaluating medicine. For example, Israel is working on some medicines. Germany is working on something. India, they are one of the major research factors across the world. They are working on a lot of medicine. But unless or otherwise its safety is proven, it will not be launched for a large scale commercial use.
Okay, thanks. There is another question from Mrs. Yoshri.
Yes.
Yeah, post-graduation is compulsory to enter regulatory affairs.
Okay, it's a very tricky question. Yes and no. Post-graduation always has its advantages to anything you do in pharmacy. I won't say that. But it is not mandatory for you to have post-graduation. You can certainly enter regulatory affairs with your undergraduation. But as a professional, as a friend, as a person who has post-graduation, I will always encourage you, put on that additional 2 years in your career. Take a specialization, whatever you are interested in. That will certainly help you for not only regulatory, any field you are getting into in the future, it will certainly help. In fact, I will not only encourage you for post-graduation, if you are very keenly interested in academics, I also suggest you to pursue a doctorate. But certainly, yes, you should do post-graduation.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I had a question. The trade names also come under the regulatory part?
Okay, trade name is it's a merged position between legal and regulatory. In regulatory label, suppose I am going to today get a label approved from a regulatory body. Over the product name, there is trade name mentioned. So the first aspect I will check is my trade name TM, which is applied, or R, which is registered. So this is one of the key points I will check. So if I need to understand this detail, I need to get the trademark certification. If I need a trademark certification, I will also start checking in the similar brand names how many products are selling in the market. Do I have a scope to register this particular brand name? Because if suppose I am violating this brand name of somebody else, already somebody has this brand name, I will not be able to even submit the product for registration. So trademark is an integral part of regulatory affairs. But if you ask me, will I be applying for trademark? But I will tell a legal department to apply for trademark. But certainly the regulatory person will have quite a good idea about trademarks and.
Okay, so extension to the previous question. So if I am going to launch a paracetamol tablet into the market, if I am keeping Corona Go like that, it will be acceptable by the regulatory department or?
No. It is, I can say, the very interesting, excellent question. Whoever the student raised this question, I have to appreciate, because what we foresee after 20 years of our career in regulatory affairs, somebody could visualize. No, we will not be make any brand name which is giving a direct indication of telling the patient that it is going to cure. The magical cure. You, by having this, corona is going. So such brand names is not encouraged. In most of the cases, it is not accepted also. But if you are using scientifically a brand name, for example, that particular product is for flu, and you name the product as Tamiflu, it is still fine. But if you say Go Flu, Flu Free, Flu Go, Flu Escape, something like that, all this will not be accepted. At the end of the day, these all are medicine. So we need to give that kind of respect when we do a brand name for the particular product.
Okay, so and one more final question also. I have friends those who are working in UAE. So whenever they are coming back from Gulf countries, what they will do, they will take medicines also from there, like even for Zinta. And if you are asking why, if you are asking that, they will tell Indian medicines are inferior compared to Dubai medicines like that. So whether it is true or not, because of regulatory.
I strongly object this point. No medicine is inferior. In fact, as I told you, Indian pharmaceutical industry is more important, more essential for the entire world pharmaceutical market, because the active pharmaceutical ingredient is made here. But one point about that particular person, that I don't know how to. It is an individual choice. But technically, if you want me to answer this question, Indian medicines, Indian molecules, Indian excipients are governed by Indian Pharmacopoeia. So we qualify our medicine as per IP. When it goes to export, we qualify the product as per BP, British Pharmacopoeia, or USP, or EP, European Pharmacopoeia. So when we comply a product as per that pharmacopoeia, automatically the price of the active pharmaceutical ingredient change. Okay, I'll give you a simple example for you to understand. 1 kg sugar from our grocery shop, I don't know what is the current price in India. It must be 40, maybe, I'm not very sure, because my mother always buy for us. So I don't know the price. Here I can say it is close to our price, 80 rupees. But if you buy an IP grade sugar for making syrup, the cost must be 200 rupees. If you buy a EP grade sugar, the price must be 2000 rupees. But it is sugar. The same sugar we can use in everywhere. We can use for making coffee also. We can make for making syrup also. It's only the way we qualify the parameters it is tested against. So this decides the price of the product, but not the quality. Strongly object the quality part. But yes, maybe paracetamol we get 1 rupee per tablet. Here paracetamol we have our price equivalent 25 rupees. But it doesn't mean that our paracetamol doesn't be cheap. And certainly yes, I don't accept this point about quality. There are companies in India where our quality is many folds better than the pharmaceutical facilities. Even I am privileged and humbled to have seen some pharmaceutical industries across the world, in Europe, in Africa. Indian pharmaceutical industries, companies, the way they maintain GMP or the quality is way ahead of any other country. Only thing is we are getting this at an affordable price, maybe at a lesser price. Maybe we have this tendency to understand that a product which we get it in a lesser price is less efficient. No. So I will tell you in the other way. We buy medicines from India when we come. So this is my point.
Okay, thank you, sir. And your final word for the regulatory aspects, those who want to pursue their career in regulatory. So there are some people they want to pursue their career in regulatory. So your final words.
Okay. Concentrate on your studies. Stay safe. Very important. So whichever the specialization, whichever the subject you are more inclined to, focus on it. Start reading a lot about regulations. For example, as I told you, ICH guidelines you can download from internet. Not only ICH guidelines. Today, if you see, everything is available in public. You have a lot to read. try to read about a lot of regulations across the world, regulations governed by US FDA, how is food is regulated. When you go out, when you go for your day-to-day life shopping, start observing each and everything. What is the label? What is the mandatory requirement in this? What is the regulation in this? Try to keep your eyes open. You will come across a lot of things. You will come across a lot of acts and comments. So that will give you a lot of idea about how to prepare your regulatory. Regulatory being a emerging function, there are a lot of vacancies coming up. So maybe once you finish it, you will be able to join as an entry-level regulatory officer in any company. Then the world is open to you.
Thank you, sir.
Solomon, this is Raja here.
Yes.
This is
Yes, Mr.
regarding emergency medicines. Currently 2-3 medicines approved. So what kind of efficacy is proved particular medicines, or it's a kind of phase 1 based on the phase 1 study, or it's a direct approval kind of?
Okay, I will tell you, for any medicine for you to launch, phase 3 study is mandatory. So you will do phase 1, you will do phase 2, you will do phase 3. But before phase 4, you can certainly launch the product in the market. That is when there are certain products which is recalled from the market after phase 4. They call it as post-marketing surveillance. But certainly you need to have studies till phase 3. Otherwise you will not be able to launch a product, especially as an emergency medicine.
Sir, and one more final question.
Yes, sir. Please.
Recently, even the US exported a lot of hydroxychloroquine. So there is a news spread over that WhatsApp groups like that. There are a lot of US FDA approval has been cleared up very easily during this pandemic, like that. Whether it is true or not?
No, it is not easy. As I keep telling you, the process is not easy. The regulators only trying to make things simple because of the situation at the moment. Take an example of COVID, pre-COVID and post-COVID era. I don't know when we are going into post-COVID era. We should always try our best to reach that place. In COVID era, we need something. We don't know what is that. We need some medicine to act. We need some medicine to treat patients. At that particular moment of time, US FDA addresses that application very differently. They may not check till phase 3, which I told you as an answer for the launch. Maybe if you have phase 2, they may consider. In pre-COVID era, US FDA check every details of hydrochloroquine with magnifying lens. It may take 3 years for you to get approval. So during COVID, it may take 3 months because of the emergency situation. Post-COVID, we have both experience. We know what the molecule is. We also know what hydrochloroquine did during COVID. So post-COVID, US FDA will have complete information of what is the risk, what is the benefit of that particular molecule. So they can act much better. So whatever the news comes in WhatsApp, so please don't rely on that. Every authority put a very meticulous approach in approving the product. The authority can be US, can be a very stringent UA regulatory body, it can be Saudi FDA, it can be Japanese FDA. At the end of the day, whatever they evaluate and they clear for is for the goodness of the patient. If they feel this is going to save more lives, they will take that extra one step to give that privilege to the manufacturers or the drug makers. But if they feel no, the risk is more, they may not give. So whatever the results, in fact, if you see US bought 55 billion worth of chloroquine from India because they believe that it can treat. So that is the confidence. But it is not only US confidence on the molecule. US indirectly telling everybody that this is working in COVID, please, you also please take. That is how the world looks at developed regulatory bodies like US. But in spite of that, every country has their own systems and process in place to approve a particular medicine. As I told you, at the end of the day, they do it for the welfare of the patients and the people.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Solomon.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for your presentation. Interaction went on well. on behalf of our management of AKCP, hereby express my wholehearted thanks to you and your management for giving such a informative and wonderful presentation and interaction. Hello, can you hear Dr. Salaman?
I can hear, sir, clearly. Please proceed.
Presentation about the global regulatory affairs. So some seeds of intelligent in our student. I hope this interaction will motivate students and encourage them in active learning of global regulatory affairs. Dr. Salaman, on request, in future, let's have a good collaboration for development and betterment for our students' career.
Definitely, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will do my best.
Thank you. For betterment of AKCP alumni and our AKCP students, particularly, I am expecting the same.
Surely, sir. Surely, I'll do my best.
Okay. Then, whenever you would like to plan your native in future, please let me know. We'll arrange the international seminar, Dr. Salaman.
Sir, certainly I will tell you once all the air is open or borders are open, I will certainly visit.
Yeah.
We will
Please
have a
it-
practice. I will be more honored.
Me before your arrival, okay?
Certainly, sir. Certainly, I'll indicate to you much before.
Thank you, Dr. Salaman. Very kind of your presentation, support. I will never forget your timely help.
Sir, it's my pleasure, my privilege.
Yeah.
I'm very honored.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Take care, Salaman. Another one more request, Salaman. In future, our webinar, kindly refer your colleague, friends for our international webinar.
I will do it. Certainly, if you are interested in some different topics, I will definitely organize for some speakers from our side. Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you. I will get back to you by mail.
No problem,
Tonight,
sir.
back to you mail. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah.
Really happy.
Thank you. Sorry, I have taken much of your.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
No problem, sir. Yes,
Hello.
I can hear.
Salaman?
Sir, I can hear you.
Yeah, here? Are you here?
Yes, sir.
I can hear you.
Line level.
I have taken much of your time during your busy and hectic schedule.
No problem at all, sir. Thank you very much.
You will never forget, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Salaman. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to all students, staff, teachers, faculties. Thank you very much for this opportunity. We will stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. So, shall we conclude the session?